Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on RadioFreedom.us. So I have a pretty interesting guest on the line with me, Judge Jim P. Gray, who is a nationally known and respected author and speaker, and long advocated reform of the nation's drug laws. He is a highly regarded jurist. Judge Gray served on California's Orange County Superior Court from 1989 till 2010. His hundreds of media appearances have included Fox News, ABC, C-SPAN, radio stations all over the country. He's written 3 different books, and, now what I'm sure could be the pinnacle of his career. He's on with the Angel Clark Show. All right, obviously I'm kidding. It's not the pinnacle of his career, but actually another interesting tidbit is he is the other half of the Gary Johnson ticket. So Governor Gary Johnson is the Libertarian candidate for President of the United States, and Judge Jim Gray is the vice presidential candidate on that ticket. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and I've had some questions about the campaign and how everything is going.
Well, Angel, thank you, and it's just great to be with you. Good to be with good people. I am as excited about being on this ticket with Governor Gary Johnson as anything in my lifetime since the birth of my children. So, sure, ask any questions you want. Liberty will prevail.
Well, it's to me, one thing that's really fascinating is the fact that I saw polls that put you guys at, 19% nationwide. That's a huge percentage when we're talking about a libertarian candidate. This is really exciting, actually.
Well, we are making progress. We must be able to poll well enough to be in the debates, and the whole thing is centered around that, because we are convinced that if we're actually in the 3 presidential debates, which will be in October, and by the way, 1 vice presidential debate in October, that if we're seen as viable, we will be the odds-on favorite actually to win this election. Candidly, if we're not in the debates, we lose. But these people will see the value of Governor Gary Johnson, not just for what he says, although he talks about freedom and he is financially responsible, socially tolerant, but for what he actually did while he was the governor of New Mexico. He is the most qualified person to be president of the United States that I know of, and it's a pleasure and a privilege and exciting to be his running mate.
Well, one thing that I found that was really fascinating was the way that Governor Gary Johnson was excluded from almost all of the presidential debates that he took part in as a Republican candidate. It was almost as if they were purposefully leaving him out and purposefully, kind of breaking the rules so that they didn't have him on the stage. And even after people continued to drop out, they wouldn't put him on the stage, which to me kind of showed maybe a fear factor. What will we do if we have libertarians in control of the country,
I think that there's a lot to be said for what you acknowledge, that it got so stark that maybe you heard, maybe not. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jesse Ventura, of course, the independent governor of Minnesota, was actually being interviewed live on CNN, and he said, unbeknownst to us actually, and certainly unbeknownst to them, I am endorsing Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate for president. Now, that was great, but when CNN put it up on their website, they actually deleted that endorsement, and it gets that stark. So, what's going on here, I really do believe, honestly, that President Obama, when he came out in favor of what he called gay marriage, was trying to offset. That happened to be on the date that the Libertarian Convention nominated the governor and me. He came out on that date, and it was not an accident. He's trying to take away some of our issues, trying to blunt them, because he knows full well what a strong candidate Governor Gary Johnson is, and he's right.
I will be completely honest. I didn't hear about the Jesse Ventura nomination or endorsement. I didn't hear about that. So I guess this is a prime example of what it is that we're talking about. People purposefully avoiding, third party candidates. And, I'm actually really, really looking forward to this election because I feel like throughout the next, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 years, we're going to see a really serious rise of the third party. And I'm so sick and tired of people throwing this two-party paradigm at me. You know, the concept that there are only two people out there, two people in the entire country that could possibly represent me and represent my opinions. And, you know, that's it's just such a laughable idea, you know?
Well, we actually have an enormous benefit, Angel, that neither the Republicans nor Democrats have a hope to have. And that is that we will put in a coalition government. You know, we will put in a government made up of people on the merits, who are libertarian and independents, of course, but also Republicans and Democrats, as long as they are in tune with our philosophy and approach of financial responsibility and social tolerance. What does that mean? It really means that when one of the political parties gives us some political trouble, we will simply have some people in our administration, highly placed, say, go out and talk to your colleagues. You know, tell them this is a good idea. Embrace this one. We'll give all the credit in the world to people that come up with good ideas, people that embrace good ideas. We will have a functional government getting away from this bipolar politics that's going on in Washington today. And people absolutely desire, they crave doing that. They crave having the government actually be functional and doing something positive for us instead of simply trying to play politics with themselves. To the degree that the governor says, and he's right, be libertarian with me, just this one election, and you will appreciate it. And if you don't for some reason, you can always 4 years from now go back to the same politics as usual. It's exciting, and it's going to happen. It's just going to happen. You mark my words.
You know, I really like the phrase that you just used, bipolar politics. That's I haven't heard that one before, but it's so very fitting. And I think that's really what we are. We're in a system of bipolar politics. You know, we've got it's one extreme or the other, but they're both the same. So I think it's a very good term. I like it. Now, what can you tell me about maybe some of your stances on the issues? For instance, the books that you've written. There is Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed, a judicial indictment of the war on drugs. There is which was featured in the 2007 documentary, The American Drug War, the Last White Hope. So for instance, what is your stance on legalizing marijuana?
Well, we should treat marijuana like alcohol. In fact, there are 3 initiatives now that will be on the November ballot. Doing just that. One is Colorado, one is the state of Washington, and one is Oregon. We have endorsed all 3. I'm in Illinois right now campaigning, and I will stop in Colorado on my way home. We'll stump for that one. I will be in Washington, actually in Oregon, within a week or two, and I will be endorsing and stumping for those as well. It just makes perfect sense. But today, in California, for example, and in most states, marijuana is the largest cash crop in our state. In California, number 2 is grapes, for heaven's sake. So people are using it, and it's funding, it's fueling pretty much every juvenile gang in our state and around the country. Now let's take that money, or Mexican drug cartels, take that money, and instead of fueling them, let's use it to pay our firefighters, pay our teachers, fix our roads. It's going to be there anyway. And as people realize, or beginning to,
all right. Well, hold on to that thought. I'm getting the cue from the music, but I had a discussion with a politician just a few nights ago who started, who used the "Who will build the roads" line on me, and it would be really amusing to build roads with taxation from marijuana. Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show on RadioFreedom.us. So I have on the line with me Judge Jim Gray, who is an author, a speaker, an advocate, and also vice presidential nominee for Gary Johnson's ticket. So it's Johnson and Gray. Judge, I want to thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And I also want to mention, by the way, he tweets. That's right, he does. He tweets, and his Twitter handle is Judge Jim Gray. He's also got the website judgejimgray.com, and you can find out more about him as well by going to GaryJohnson2012.com. So I want to, as I said, I want to thank you for sticking around, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about some of your stances on the issues, because right now you said you're going around and you're basically stumping and campaigning to work on a ballot initiative to regulate cannabis production. So what can you tell me about that? Like, what exactly has to happen for this ballot initiative to happen, and why is it important to you?
Well, it is in Colorado, Washington, and Oregon, so each one is somewhat different. But they do basically, and generally speaking, treat marijuana like alcohol. They regulate it, control it, they tax it. They can control that way the things that today they cannot. You know, today the term controlled substances is the biggest oxymoron of our lives, because as soon as you prohibit something like marijuana is prohibited, you give up all of your controls whatsoever about quantity, about place of sale, about licensing, about quality, even about age restrictions. So it is easier today. You don't need to take my word for it. Talk to any first 10 teenagers you find. They'll tell you it's easier for them today to get marijuana if they want to than it is a six-pack of beer. Why? Because the alcohol is regulated and controlled by the government, and the illegal marijuana is controlled by illegal marijuana dealers, and they don't ask for ID. And by the way, along the way, of course, we're funding juvenile gangs and Mexican drug cartels, a whole bunch of other thugs. So that's one of the things, and there's so many more. It's not our biggest issue, although it's certainly an important one.
But I don't like regulations. So why do I want to see more regulations applied to marijuana?
Well, fair enough. We would treat it like wine, where there is regulation. I think it should be controlled. But on the other hand, you can, just like wine, if you want to grow your own, you can grow your own grapes in your backyard. No, you can't sell it without a license. You can do the same thing with marijuana. So the answers to most of questions are, well, what if that? However we do it with wine is how it would be done, at least in those states with marijuana. The beauty of what we would do as Governor Johnson and I in Washington is we would go exactly like we did when we came to our senses and repealed alcohol prohibition. We did not say that Colorado or Nebraska or Illinois will sell alcohol. No, we just said that now the federal government's role is out of this, except that they will assist each state in enforcing its chosen laws. So the state of Nebraska or Florida can do exactly what they feel is appropriate, because we all know people of Florida, for example, are adult enough to decide how best to serve and protect their people. And we will figure out what works and what doesn't. That's the concept of federalism that made us great in the first place. We should go back to it, and that's exactly what we will do.
Now, I like the concept of repealing the federal law. There's definitely something to that. And, something else I wanted to mention. One of the books that you wrote was Wearing the Robe, The Art and Responsibilities of Judging in Today's Courts, and also a voter's handbook, Effective Solutions to America's Problems. Well, how do you feel about jury nullification?
Yeah, that does come up a fair amount. And actually, I depart from a lot of my friends, the libertarians, and certainly people involved with drug policy reform. I do not favor the jury nullification argument as such. Now, you must understand, Angel, the juries do have in our system, as well they should, the power to vote not guilty if they want to, for whatever reason they want to. But be careful what you wish for. The jury nullification issue is you want the judge to instruct the jury that they don't have to follow the law if they don't agree with the law. Now, most of the time that arises with regard to medical marijuana cases, and of course you know how I feel about that. But it could also arise with regard to racial discrimination, or you have a husband that kind of slaps his wife around. And you had some old codger on the jury to think, it's okay to slap her around, and she mouthed off to him, you got to keep her in her place. Do you want the judge to instruct the jury that they don't have to follow the law if they don't agree with it? Be careful what you wish for.
Well,
it's not a major issue, but that's one of them.
I can understand your statement on that, but I think that, for instance, if you follow the non-aggression principle, I don't think that there are many people that would say, all right, it's fine that this man beat the crap out of his wife.
Let's take it to a racial issue, where they really don't think that, and you go to the South, you can go into many cities. You would find some people that maybe think that there's a racial superiority issue. You're going to want the judge to say, if you don't think that racial segregation is inappropriate by law, you don't have to follow it. You get into anarchy pretty quickly in those directions.
Yeah, but it's called the free market. It's called the free market.
Okay.
If I went into a restaurant where they wouldn't serve someone that was a different color than the owner, I wouldn't go back. And then I would use the internet and social media to inform people of what happened. And suddenly word would get around, and I feel that they would be forced out of business just by the free market alone.
Well, okay, and you certainly know how I feel about the free market. But I think you and I are going to have to disagree on this one.
Probably, but listen, we're almost out of time. So, what can people do to get Gary Johnson and yourself in these debates?
Really important, because we're dividing our campaign into two phases, and the first phase ends by the end of September. We are hoping we will be polling well enough to be in the presidential debates. And at the moment, this artificial commission made up of Republicans and Democrats say you have to poll at 15%. Ross Perot was invited to the debates in 1992 only at 7%, and then they got together and say, well, we want to freeze them out. So if someone calls from a polling group, the answer is don't hang up. Say, your vote is your own, but say, I will support Governor Gary Johnson. Get us in the debates. We will win this election.
So I have a bit of surprise for you. We actually have Judge Jim Gray on for another segment, so we're kind of extending this discussion with him. And Judge Jim Gray is an author, a speaker. He is, I would say, an activist and an advocate, and he is on the ticket with Gary Johnson as the vice presidential candidate. So if you were to vote for Gary Johnson for president in 2012, you would be voting for Judge Jim Gray as vice president. I want to thank you for sticking around. I appreciate it because, there's a lot on the issues that we didn't really get to discuss. There's so much, there are so many situations where Republicans and Democrats, I think they try to act like their opinions differ, but they really don't. And so they act like, all right, well, we're completely the opposite of the other major party, but they're really not. And you were saying that the only people that really are opposing their beliefs or what they're pushing upon people, that would be you and Governor Gary Johnson. So, for instance, let's talk a little bit about the internet and technology, and then maybe we'll move on to education. But I feel it's really important to talk about the internet because I feel that the government is trying to kind of get its claws into it. They want to control the internet. They want to censor it. They want to get rid of the free market that we have there. And how do you feel about that?
Oh, Angel, we are a bastion against that. That we need to have the internet be free of censorship, free of government control. And we stand up for that freedom. That's a really easy one for us. Gun rights, it's the same thing. We are really in favor of liberty, and there's so many excuses for taking away our liberty now. We're talking about keeping us in fear. My goodness, the Republicans and Democrats are so similar in so many different ways. They're the same on one side, and we're the only ones opposite. For example, keeping us at war. We find all kinds of ways to send our troops into foreign countries into conflict. Now they're talking, I read just a couple of days ago, the Obama administration talking about sending our troops to Mali, for heaven's sake. We're already into Sudan. We're certainly in Afghanistan. We're in Somalia. They're talking about bombing Iran. Now, wait a minute. They're talking about going to war, both Romney and Obama, talking about going to war with Iran. We say we're not going to go to war with anyone, unless they attack us or our allies. And by the way, I'm going to be the only one probably with military who's been in the military in this election. I really care about our troops. We're going to provide well for them, make sure that they're equipped. But if anyone attacks us, they're going to truly wish they had not. But otherwise, we're going to declare peace. We're not isolationists, but we're certainly not interventionists. Republicans and Democrats are. They keep us in fear. This whole war on terror. I mean, how can you go to war against an emotion, against a way of thinking? But they keep us in fear. The TSA, for heaven's sake, we're going to privatize it. No, not Obama, not Romney. They have this cottage industry that I've finally given up. Actually, it is what I call nude screening thing that they have, X-ray thing, because it's more of an indignity to have them touch your whole body and feel it up. But we are going to privatize it and allow the airlines to be in charge of security. They have every interest in having their airplanes secure. They will do it less intrusively, less expensively, more effectively. This is the difference between Governor Gary Johnson, the most qualified person to be president that I know of, and on the other side, both Romney and Obama. It won't make much difference in so many ways, regardless of what it is. So you ask people, say, are you comfortable with the way the country has, quote, so-called been led for the last 12 years? If you are, okay, vote for the Democrat or Republican. But if not, Governor Gary Johnson's the only way to go. And he'll say, and we look at our ads, you go to GaryJohnson2012.com, you'll see one of them says, be libertarian with me for one election. I mean, let's agree on the big things. We won't agree on the little ones. Agree on the big things. Be a libertarian with me. And if you don't like what happens, which you will, but if you don't, you can always go back to politics as usual. We cannot lose with Governor Johnson. We will lose with either Obama or Romney. So I'm excited. It's the most exciting thing that's happened to me since the birth of my children. This is the way to go.
Yeah, I'm looking right now on the website, and I'm looking at the candidate comparison, which is, compare the candidates, compare where they stand on the issues. And for instance, where do you stand on bailouts and spending and the deficit?
Sure. Well, that's a lot of questions. As far as the bailouts, they were a mistake. You let General Motors go through bankruptcy. They're not going to go out of business. You let them go through bankruptcy according to our laws. Terribly unfair, of course, for Government Motors or General Motors, as they still call themselves, to compete with Ford that did it right to begin with. But they would have been fine. You let them hit bottom. You let them address their situation, and then you move on. The bailouts of these various financial organizations, it was a mistake. You've got to let these laws take place. I think some corporations are too big to fail, and you shouldn't let them be that big if that's the case. So, the Obama administration is extremely, extremely adept at one thing, and that is finding new and different ways of giving away our tax money. They're doing that now with regard to student loans. Well, student loans is a mistake to have the government involved in the first place. It just increases the amount of money that the institutions are going to spend because you've got a third party spending the money for tuition. So what happens? Guess what? The tuition goes up. We have seen that, and they give loans to students that really shouldn't be getting them in the first place, and they end up in debt, and then that debt is forgiven or not pursued. It's just a mess to have government involved. Government should not be involved in education at all. Just should not be. The parents should be able to choose where and how their children are educated. And the money that is spent is government money, fine. Government money, the parents should decide where and how that money should be spent. And they will demand excellence. They will get excellence because today, Angel, as you and everyone listening to us knows, our schools are failing our children. You come back to the school choice, put this power in the hands of the parents. They will demand excellence. Within 4 or 5 years, we will again have excellence in our school system nationwide.
It seems to me like you're saying the government shouldn't really be involved in anything, or at least not a lot. So, for instance, based on your own stance, what do you feel that the government should be involved in? Or I guess maybe a better way to rephrase that is, what is the role of government?
Well, you can start by looking at the Constitution. I certainly believe that the government should have a military. We should have a Federal Bureau of Investigation and a court system. They say a monetary system, it's in the Constitution. And the Constitution even says the mail service, so I'm having some problems there. But they should not be involved in education. We should not have a Department of Commerce. We should not have a Department of Bureau of Indian Affairs, as far as I'm concerned. Department of Education. They shouldn't be in healthcare, education, that sort of thing. Our government is obese. Our government, honestly, as you know, Angel, our big government is extremely good and adept at one thing, and that is increasing the size and the cost and the power of big government. It's been going on for decades, and it's time that this usurped power be returned to the states, be returned to the local governments, and more importantly, returned to the people. And that's what we will do, and we will make the United States of America proud again and strong again. I guarantee it.
You know, I actually really like that line that you used. The government is obese, because in my mind, then we have the obesity epidemic. So it makes it seem like the obese government is the problem. But I want to thank you again for joining me. The website, GaryJohnson2012.com.